There was a tray. A brown molded cafeteria tray with 5 compartments. And if you grew up in America in the 1980s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the smell of that cafeteria before you even open the door. You know the sound of that tray sliding down the metal rail. You know which lunch made you sprint to the line, and which one made you trade your dessert before you even sat down. These weren't just meals. They were the soundtrack of your childhood. And one by one, the government changed the rules, and every single one of them disappeared. Today we're counting down 10 of them. And I promise you, by number 1, you're going to be on the phone with your mom asking her if she remembers. Don't go anywhere. Number 10, rectangle pizza. It wasn't round. It was never round. And somehow that made it better. A frozen sheet of par-baked dough, 14 by 20 inches, came stacked 12 to a case from a regional supplier. The lunch lady ladled tomato sauce straight from a tilt skillet, spread it with the back of a serving spoon like she'd done it 10,000 times, because she had, then buried the whole sheet under 1.5 pounds of low-moisture mozzarella. 8 minutes at 500 degrees. Then that long-handled wheel cutter came down and gave you 24 perfect rectangles. Each one weighed about 4 ounces. The crust was thick, almost focaccia-like, with a thin glaze of oil on the bottom from the parchment. The cheese cooled into one single rubbery layer you could lift whole and fold in half. Friday was rectangle pizza day. Kids who hated everything else on that tray still finished their rectangle in 3 bites and looked back at the warming line. In 1987, it cost the district 65 cents a serving. By 2012, the new rules demanded whole grain dough, reduced fat cheese, and sodium under 480 milligrams per serving. The original carried nearly 700. The wheel cutter still exists. The recipe doesn't. Number 9. Salisbury steak. It looked like a hamburger that had given up on the bun, and it was glorious. The patty was beef and breadcrumb, shaped in a press, frozen flat, then baked from frozen for 40 minutes in a deep hotel pan. No shortcuts. No skipping steps. While it baked, the gravy came together in a separate pot. A sealed pouch of mushroom and onion base, hot water, and a wooden paddle stirred long enough to coat the back of a ladle. Thick. Dark. The kind of gravy that pooled in every corner of your tray compartment, and pulled everything into it. The cafeteria recipe from the 1988 USDA quantity cookbook called for 1 pound of meat to feed 5 kids, which made Salisbury steak the single cheapest hot entree on the entire line. It went straight onto a bed of mashed potatoes, green beans alongside, and that gravy ladled across both like a dark blanket over everything. You either loved it or you refused to touch it. And every lunch lady in America knew by 3rd grade exactly which side of that line you were on. She didn't even have to ask. By 2012, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act measured the sodium in that patty and the gravy together, and came back over the new limit. The wooden paddles went into storage. The recipe never came back out. Number 8. Sloppy Joes. The bun was soaked through before your tray even hit the table. And nobody cared. The recipe ran on a single page of the 1988 USDA quantity cookbook like it owned the place. 25 pounds of ground beef, 4 cans of tomato sauce, brown sugar, vinegar, mustard, diced onion, and Worcestershire. Everything went into a tilt skillet and simmered for 40 minutes while the smell crawled through every hallway in the building. By 10 in the morning, every kid in that school already knew what day it was. The mixture came out deep red, thick, and sweet at the edges with just enough vinegar bite underneath to keep it honest. A kindergartner got 1 scoop on a hamburger bun. A 6th grader got 2. The bun collapsed the moment that ladle made contact, which meant the only real way to eat a cafeteria sloppy joe was with a fork, and every kid figured that out by their 2nd time through the line. The meat spilled into the compartment, and you chased it around the tray and scraped every last bit because nothing on that rotation tasted quite like it. A single serving ran past 900 milligrams of sodium. The 2012 standards drew the cap well below that number. The tilt skillet got repurposed. The Worcestershire bottle got put away. And an entire generation of kids lost the one lunch that made them actually forget they were in school. Number 7. peanut butter bars. There was nothing else on that tray once you saw it. Not the corn. Not the milk carton. Not whatever entree was sitting in the main compartment. Just that bar. Dark chocolate on top, perfectly smooth, cut into a clean rectangle with a knife that had been dipped in hot water between every single slice. The recipe lived on an index card in the lunch lady's binder, and nowhere else. 1 pound of butter, 3 cups of peanut butter, 4 cups of powdered sugar, 6 cups of graham cracker crumbs, all mixed by hand in a stainless steel bowl the size of a baby bath. Pressed into a half-sheet pan 1/2 inch thick. Topped with melted milk chocolate and butter, smooth flat with the back of a long spatula, then chilled in the walk-in cooler for 2 full hours. What came out was something closer to a Reese's cup pressed into a brick than anything the word dessert normally covers. Sweet on top. Salty underneath. Dense enough to fill a small hand completely. It appeared on the 4-week rotation exactly twice a month. On those mornings, attendance in some elementary schools rose by 7%. Kids traded their entire entrees for a second one. Lunch ladies baked an extra pan for the teachers because the teachers were trading for them too. In 2014, the Smart Snacks rule capped dessert at 200 calories. The peanut butter bar carried 460. It was gone within 18 months. The index card stayed in the binder. The binder went home with the lunch lady when she retired. Number 6. Tater Tots. Nobody on that lunch line had a loyalty problem when tater tots were on the tray. Every other side dish was negotiable. The corn got pushed around. The green beans got left behind. But the tater tots? Gone before you even picked up your fork. They arrived in a 15-pound box from Ore-Ida, frozen into perfect golden cylinders the size of a child's thumb. The cafeteria oven loaded 6 sheet pans at once, 400 degrees for 20 minutes, no flipping required. What came out was a tray of crisp-shelled, steam-packed potato cylinders that shattered when you bit into them and went soft in the center like a tiny baked potato wrapped in a shell of pure crunch. A scoop and a half went onto each tray. Then the lunch lady hit them with a steel salt shaker she refilled every single morning before the first bell. That salt landed on hot oil and stuck. You could taste it on the first one before you even sat down. Kids built entire eating strategies around the tater tot. Salisbury steak got dipped in gravy first, then dragged through the tots. The tots went first always, then everything else. The order was as fixed as the bell's schedule, and every kid at that table followed it without anyone saying a word. Modern cafeteria fryers were removed from most American elementary schools under saturated fat regulations. The tots that survived came back as baked oven varieties. Lighter. Drier. The shell doesn't shatter anymore. The salt doesn't stick the same way. Something fundamental left with the fryer and never came back. Number 5. Friday fish sticks. Friday meant fish. It didn't matter what religion you were. It didn't matter what district you were in. By the time the 1980s rolled around, Friday Fish Day had embedded itself into the American school cafeteria calendar so completely that nobody questioned it anymore. It started with the Catholic kids needing a meatless option. And once a kitchen was set up for Fish Friday, the rules stayed for absolutely everyone. The fish sticks came frozen in a wax-lined case of 200 breaded golden rectangles of Atlantic pollock caught off the Massachusetts coast, baked on a sheet pan for 15 minutes at 400 degrees until the breading turned the color of dry sand and the inside steamed through completely. 3 sticks per tray. A scoop of macaroni and cheese alongside. A square of cornbread in the corner. And then the paper cup. That small pleated paper cup of tartar sauce the lunch lady mixed herself from a bowl of mayonnaise and pickle relish sitting right there on the counter. You dragged each stick through that cup slowly because you only had so much, and rationing it was a skill you developed by 2nd grade. The lemon wedge on the side was largely decorative, but every kid squeezed it anyway because it felt like the right thing to do. By 2014, the breading tested above the new federal sodium limits for elementary trays. The cases stopped arriving on Tuesday mornings. The paper cups disappeared. And Friday became just another day on the cafeteria calendar with nothing to set it apart from any other. Number 4. Macaroni and cheese. You knew the color before you even got to the line. That specific shade of neon yellow-orange that existed nowhere else in nature, and somehow made your mouth water the moment you spotted it 3 compartments away on someone else's tray. This was not the blue box. This was not anything you could replicate at home. The recipe came straight from the 1988 USDA quantity cookbook, and it did not apologize for a single ingredient. 18 pounds of dry elbow pasta boiled in a 30-gallon kettle. A full gallon of whole milk. 2 pounds of butter. And 4 pounds of processed American cheese cut into cubes and melted into the sauce until it coated every noodle like a warm blanket pulled tight. The whole batch went into a deep hotel pan and baked for 40 minutes at 350 degrees. What came out had a thin crusted top layer the color of an autumn leaf, slightly firm, slightly crisp, sitting over a molten interior that moved when you cut into it. A square serving spoon dropped a portion about the size of a coffee mug onto your tray. You chased the noodles around the compartment with your fork, and you never once complained about the effort. It was the side dish that made every entree better, and the entree that needed no side dish at all. The 2012 nutrition standards measured the saturated fat in that cheese sauce, and found it pushing past 16% of total calories. The new cap sat at 10. Reduced fat cheddar replaced the processed American. Whole grain noodles replaced the elbows. The color is closer to ivory now. The neon is gone, and it took something irreplaceable with it. Number 3. Chicken pot pie. There was a moment when that square spatula broke through the crust, and the steam came up off the gravy underneath, and every kid within 3 feet of that tray turned their head. That moment was chicken pot pie day. The crust was a full sheet of pie dough laid flat across a deep hotel pan, nothing fancy, nothing decorated, just pale and smooth going into the oven and coming out golden and blistered in patches after 45 minutes at 350 degrees. Underneath that crust was a thick stew of diced white meat chicken, peas, carrots, and a roux made from chicken fat and flour that had been cooking long enough to turn the color of warm butter. The USDA's surplus chicken program had been feeding this recipe since 1955, which meant a kid in Georgia and a kid in Montana were eating the exact same pot pie on the exact same Wednesday from the exact same federal commodity supply. That paperback book-sized square landed in the main compartment of your tray, and the gravy immediately began pushing toward the edges. You broke the crust deliberately, slowly, because the steam needed somewhere to go, and because you wanted to see what was underneath, like opening something that had been sealed just for you. The vegetables were soft. The chicken pulled apart without any effort. The gravy was thick enough to coat your fork on the way out. By 2012, the pie crust failed the saturated fat calculation, and districts replaced it with chicken stew over a whole grain biscuit. The biscuit is fine, but it does not steam when you break it open. And that moment, that specific moment, belongs only to the original. Number 2, baked spaghetti. The smell hit you halfway down the hallway at 10 in the morning, and your stomach made a decision before your brain caught up. 20-pound bags of dry spaghetti went into a 30-gallon kettle of boiling water while the sauce built itself in a separate tilt skillet. Ground beef browned first. Then canned tomato puree. Then garlic powder, dried oregano, a pinch of sugar that nobody ever listed on the recipe card but every lunch lady added anyway because it rounded out the acid and made the whole thing taste like it had been simmering since Tuesday. The pasta came out of that kettle in a wire scoop like a net pulling something precious from deep water. Into a deep hotel pan it went, sauce ladled over the top, then the whole thing slid into the oven for another 20 minutes until the edges of the pasta caught the heat and the top layer went from glossy to matte and slightly firm. That is what made cafeteria baked spaghetti different from every other spaghetti you ever ate. The bake. Those edges that crisped just enough to give your fork something to push against before the center gave way soft and saucy underneath. A 6-ounce ladle dropped a generous tangle onto your tray with a piece of garlic bread pressed against the side like it was holding everything together. Kids with braces ate the garlic bread first and worried about the rest later. The 2012 standards capped white pasta to 1 serving per week per child, and the recipe quietly disappeared from most menus by 2015. The kettle stayed. The oregano stayed. The baked part, the part that made it what it was, never came back. Number 1. Hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes. This was the one. The lunch that did not look like much when the ladle hit your tray and looked like everything once you took the first bite. The mashed potatoes came from a 50-pound bag of dehydrated flakes from the USDA commodity program, reconstituted in a steam kettle with hot water, real butter, and a splash of whole milk, then whipped with a wire whip on a long handle until they held a peak like something a grandmother would be proud of. A number 12 scoop dropped a perfect dome onto the center of your tray like a small white hill. Then came the hamburger gravy. Ground beef browned in a tilt skillet with diced onion until the meat went dark at the edges and the onion turned translucent and sweet. Flour went in next, coating every crumble, then beef broth poured in slow while the lunch lady stirred and the whole skillet thickened into something glossy and deep brown that smelled like a Sunday kitchen on a Wednesday afternoon. A full 6-ounce ladle went over that potato dome and ran down every side and pooled in the corners of the compartment, and you dragged each forkful through that pool deliberately because you wanted every single bite to have both. This was not a fancy lunch. It never pretended to be. It was ground beef and instant potatoes and a gravy made from scratch by a woman who had been making it the same way for 15 years and knew exactly when it was right without measuring a single thing. By 2014, the sodium in the gravy and the milk fat in the potatoes together crossed every new federal threshold at once. The tilt skillet got assigned to something else. The lunch lady learned a new recipe she never loved as much. These 10 lunches fed a generation. The rules changed. The trays went empty. Tell me in the comments which one you would bring back tomorrow if you could. I'll see you in the next one.